This call is now being recorded.
So good afternoon. Last class we were talking about the selection rules, right? We have done both orbital selection rules, that is Laporte, as well as the spin selection rules. Okay. So today I want to start with the relaxation. I've done a bit last class, but I'll summarize once again. Okay. So so we will talk about the relaxation in the selection rules. Now, when you talk about any selection rules, they have to properly uh, stick to only to the idealized models. That means if the structure is exactly octahedral, if we are talking about gerade and ungerade, if the parity is exactly the same without any deviations, okay, and 2s plus 1 spin and all, if everything is as it is, okay, if it is an ideal model, then we can tell that the rules can be applied strictly. Okay, what was the rule? That delta L should be equal to plus or minus 1, right? And delta S should be equal to 0. That means the transitions from D to D are forbidden, whereas S to P, P to D, D to F, okay, and so on are allowed. Okay, whereas the other one, that is D to D, F to F, S to S, P to P, all these are forbidden. Okay, and other thing, gerade to gerade, when you talk about parity, gerade to gerade or ungerade to ungerade, these are forbidden, whereas ungerade to gerade, that is U to G, it is a allowed transition. Okay, and when coming to the spin selection rule, we said that the transition from singlet state to the singlet state, doublet state to the doublet state, all these are allowed transitions. Okay, if I have a singlet to triplet or singlet to doublet, these transitions are not allowed or forbidden transitions. Okay, so these are all they are all you can follow these rules if the model is perfectly all right, of the molecule structure is not at all deviating. Okay, so now we will see, uh, even though we are telling that these dd transitions are forbidden, we very well know that the transition complexes are all colored complexes. That means there is some dd transition happening in the transition metal complexes. So why is this happening? Because there is in the uh, some relaxation in the rules, that is due to some deviations in the structure. So these DD transitions are becoming allowed instead of the forbidden thing. Okay. So why these are becoming allowed a little bit? Okay. You can talk in three important mechanisms. Okay. The first one is the first one is okay. So when you look at this, just look at this. Hope it is clear. Okay. So we will see why these are becoming uh, allowed. Okay. So because there are some relaxation. Okay. So we will see the first one, that is uh, due to the deviations in the symmetry. Okay. So when I'm talking about cubic symmetry, I'm talking about the octahedral point group. If I take octahedral point group, okay. Now, if this cubic symmetry system, that is the octahedral point group, if this is having a uh, some distortions in the structure. Okay, so then what happens? Whatever DD transitions were there forbidden, they will become allowed. Okay, now we will see how these are becoming allowed once these distortions are happening in the structure. Okay, so what I can tell is, you know that these octahedral complexes, they have the inversion center. So if I remove this inversion center either temporarily or permanently, then it will not be a octahedral molecule anymore. Okay, so naturally once this I is removed, okay, you can have the DD transitions. That means we will just see how this is possible. So first I had octahedral molecule, then when I remove the ligands along the z-axis, it has become a lower symmetry, that is D4H, and this has happened due to the John Teller distortion. Okay, so in the octahedral point group, the transition from the ground state T1G to that of the excited state A2G is forbidden transition. Okay, why? Because whenever I do the direct product, what is the rule we said? Whenever you do the direct product, the resultant should have the or should contain the A1G, that is a totally symmetric, irreducible representation. But when you see this direct product of this particular transition, that is T1G to T2G, A2G, what is happening? You are getting a product where the A1G is not there. So this is a forbidden transition. But when I go from the octahedral to the what do you say, octahedral to the distorted octahedral or D4H symmetry. Okay, so what is happening? We will just see. So the transitions, so you are doing the elongation along the z-axis. So the point group is changing from octahedral to the D4H. So whatever the energy levels are there, the irreducible representations in the octahedral are becoming these things. Okay, these have been confirmed from the your character table and from the normal mode analysis. Okay, so T1G is getting converted to A2G plus EG. A2G is getting converted to B1G. T1U uh, is getting converted to A2U. So in this D4H symmetry, whatever direct product is there, when you look at the direct product, when you look at the, you can't see the last, yeah, you can see. So when you look at the direct product, what is happening is, it is consisting, it gives you, so instead of doing T1G into T1U into A2G, I will be doing these things, okay? A2G plus EG into B1G plus EU plus A2U, so on, okay? So when I do these things, what happens is, the direct product, you will get the irreducible representation, the product, where it is having A1U. Okay. So since A1 is present, A1 is means it is totally symmetric. So here you didn't get that A1. Here you are getting this A1. Okay. So when I go from octahedral to the D4H symmetry, the direct product is resulting in the uh, presence of A1U. Since this A1U is present, okay, now this rule is partially relaxed and you can expect there are DD transitions. So this is one of the method where I do remove a little bit of perfect structure. Okay, so we deviate, then we are getting this particular transition. Okay, now coming to the next type. Okay, so first is, how can I relax? I can relax the rules by deviating from the perfect octahedron or perfect cubic structure. Okay, so that was, I am removing the center of inversion, that is I. Okay, now when you look at the second one, okay, I will be talking about D and P orbital mixing. What happens when D and P orbitals are mixing? Okay, so when you see it here, uh, when you see it here, so when you see this here, uh, you can all see, right, the screen, the DP mixing, girls.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, no one is sleeping, right?
No, ma'am.
Yeah, yeah. Please follow, okay? I'm going very slowly. Try to follow. Okay. Okay. Now, when we are talking about the second type of relaxation, that is DP mixing, we know that rule is that the allowed transition is from ungerade to gerade. That is U to G. It is allowed. Okay. The others like G to G, U to U, these are forbidden. Okay. Only the one which is allowed is U to G. Okay. So the selection rule tells that D to D, G to G, or U to U are forbidden transitions. Okay. And these are not applicable to eccentric molecules. Okay. Or not applicable to eccentric molecules because, so what does the rule say? D to D transitions, G to G transitions are forbidden transitions. But you cannot apply it strictly to the eccentric molecules. Eccentric molecules అంటే ఇందాక octahedral లో ఏమన్నాము? They are, it is having center of inversion. That means it is a centrosymmetric molecule. Okay. Or it has got the center of symmetry. Okay. Whereas if I talk about in tetrahedron, which does not have any I, that is center of symmetry, we call those molecules as the eccentric molecules. What do we call them? We call them eccentric molecules. Okay. So in these eccentric molecules, you cannot simply tell that, you cannot simply follow the rule that DD transition, G to G transitions are forbidden. We cannot tell that because in the eccentric molecules there is some d and p orbital mixing. So it is not purely d orbital. You will have energy levels which are due to the mixing up of the d character and p character orbital of the orbitals. Okay, because of which you don't have a pure d or pure p. Okay, since there is a little bit of combination, you can expect that these transitions are becoming allowed instead of a forbidden transition. Okay, so we will take the example tetrahedron. Okay, when you take the example tetrahedron when you take the example tetrahedron sorry when you take the example tetrahedron, we know that tetrahedron molecules do not have any inversion center. So when we write this splitting of d orbitals in a tetrahedron, we write the lower energy as E and the higher energy level as T2. We don't write T2G and EG, right? We simply write E and T2. So the ground state is E, the excited state is T2. Okay. So the electron transition will be from E to T2. Okay. So when you do, so they don't have any G or U. The disparity or properties as G and U are absent in tetrahedral molecules. Okay. So when you do this E to T2, okay, direct product, okay, it has got A1 representation. So whenever I'm telling it is having A1 representation, it means that this transition is a allowed transition. Even though we don't have G, even though we don't have U, we don't know, even though it is a DD transition, okay, this is becoming A1 representation. It is having the A1 representation and it is becoming the allowed transition. So we will see why this is becoming like this. Okay, because in this particular type of eh, mixing, what is happening is these orbitals, the energy level orbital, that is either E or T2, these are formed from the atomic orbitals, right? And these atomic orbitals do have some U and G properties. Okay? Since they have some U and G properties, these are becoming the allowed transition. So we will just see what is happening here. So when you see this dx square in a tetrahedral character table, what is happening is now dx square minus phi square and dz square, these orbitals are transformed. We do write, right? Dx square minus y square and dz square will be down. Whereas when you do the tetrahedral splitting, the ground state will be E orbital, that is dx square minus y square and dz square. The upper one will be the T2 orbital excited state, that is dxy, dxz, and dyz. Okay, these are there. Okay, now the same thing if I put the label as E. Okay, now since this is a d orbitals, okay, so they have some G character. Okay, now the other orbitals, that is px, py, pz, dxz, dyz, and dxz. So what we are telling, the atomic orbitals are getting transformed to the energy orbital E, which is having, since these are having the G character, now this E will also have little bit of G character. Remember that d orbitals will give some G character, and uh, p orbitals will give some U character. Okay, so when you look at this, px, py, pz from the p orbital, okay, and left out d orbitals, that is dxz, dyz, and dxy, they all belong to T2. Okay, and they are having some U character because presence of the p orbital. Okay, and some G character due to presence of the d orbital. So this is a combination of T2 can be these three or these three. Okay, since they are coming from the atomic orbitals, they will have a mixture of both of that. So you can tell that this T2 is having a little bit of U character. Okay, so what is that allowed? U to G is allowed, right? So or G to U, these are allowed. Okay. So what I can tell now? Now this T2 is not purely G, it is having some amount of U character also. So what is happening? This transition, that is from E, which is having the G character from the atomic orbitals, and the T2, which is having the U character a little bit from the atomic orbitals of the P. Okay. So this is becoming a partially allowed. Okay, so what we can tell, this DP mixing, okay, is relaxing the Laporte or the parity selection rule, because this is not having purely G, it is having a little bit of partial U character. Okay, now we will see other examples here. If you see the other examples, what you can see, I'm talking about these octahedral complexes. What is En? En is what? What is the name of the ligand?
Ethylene diamine, ma'am.
Okay, good. So you are all listening. Okay. So I'm talking about the octahedral complexes only. But here, what is that I'm doing? I'm taking the chelate ligands, right? This ethylene diamine is a chelate ligand. It is binding to the metal at two places, right? So you can expect that cobalt will have three rings, three chelates. Each chelate is a one ethylene ring, diamine ring. Okay. So can you expect that this will be a perfect octahedron? So what are the binding atoms in ethylene diamine? Metal binds to ethylene diamine through which atom? Ethylene diamine will have nitrogens, carbons, hydrogens, right? Guys?
Yes, ma'am.
So where is the metal binding? Metal is binding to which part?
Carbon, ma'am.
No, nitrogen, amines. Okay, it binds to the amines. Okay. Similarly, here also chromium, it is also binding to the nitrogen. Okay. What is ACAC? ACAC is full form of ACAC. You prepared this complex in your first sem. Manganese ACAC. Acetyl acetanato. Okay, what is it? Acetyl acetanato. Okay, in this, it is binding through the oxygen. Fine. Okay, so you have, I'm talking about three examples where you are having chelate rings. Okay, acetyl means CH3 double bond O, acetanato. One more keto group is there. Okay, so this will bind to the metal through two things, that is two oxygen atoms. Okay, now if you talk about these two examples, what is happening here is uh, since you are having the chelate things, this is not a perfect octahedron. This will be having a symmetry of D3H. What is the symmetry? D3H. Okay. Now, since it is not a perfect octahedron, whatever transition, DD transition, it is becoming allowed. Okay. and this transition, that is from A1 ground state to the excited E, is becoming allowed. Okay, and this E, which is the excited state, again it will have the both the characters, that is P and D characters. That means it will have both U and G parity mixing. Okay, because of which these are the atomic orbitals which are giving that mixing of U and G. Okay, parity. So because of which this transition is becoming allowed, even though it was not allowed. So you can tell here the structure is not perfect octahedron, hence it is allowed, as well as the E is also having some of the U character. Okay, that is why again it is the allowed transition. Okay, so here we have explained about two things. One was about the uh, structure deviation. Okay, the second one up from the because of the DP mixing. Okay, now I'll talk about the third one, that is uh, the vibronic coupling. Okay, vibronic coupling. Okay, when you talk about this vibronic coupling, this is a combination of two things, that is vibrational and electronic transitions. Okay, till now we were talking about the electronic transitions, right? So all these transitions are electronic transitions from the lower level to the higher level. Okay, now we will see what is this coupling. So whenever this vibrational levels is combining with that of the electronic transitions, okay, you get this vibronic coupling reaction. Okay, now we will see what is this. Okay, now whenever this mixing is taking place, again they are going to relax the Laporte rules. Okay, and this is specifically in the centrosymmetric molecules, that is wherever the I is present, that is center of inversion is present. Okay, now look at these structure. Now this structure clearly shows that uh, this is a ground state, this is the excited state. Okay, and these are the vibrational levels, and this is the transition, electronic transition. Okay, now when this is coupled with the vibrational levels, okay, then you get vibronic coupling thing. Okay, so to go into the details, what we'll do is we will first look at this equation. We very well know that. What is that we know? Whenever you are talking about the Laporte for transitions, okay, selection rule, we know that the transition moment Mi is integrals between psi O of the ground state, mu I, that is a dipole moment, electronic dipole moment, and psi O of the excited state. Okay, and integrals of this S, that is the spin. Okay, now since we are talking about the uh, electronic vibrational levels, okay, what is happening is, according to the Born-Oppenauer approximation, if it is following, okay, so whatever E, in place of E, we will write, because we know that EV is nothing but a combination of E and the psi multiplication of the electronic and vibrational. Okay, so we will write here electronic vibrational and electronic vibrational. So instead of simply writing psi O, that is only of the electronic vibration, only of the electronic vibration. Now we are writing both vibrational and electronic. Okay, so that is psi E V and psi EV, because EV is nothing but psi E into psi V. Okay, I will try to tell you one thing. Uh, what I wanted to tell you is, okay, so if I'm having a So if I'm having a, this is out. Okay, leave it. I'll just tell you what it is. So if I'm talking about this psi O, okay, that is orbital, where I'm considering only the electronic transition. Okay. Now, if this I'm talking about some coupling, I should write both electronic and vibrational. Okay, because this coupling is nothing but electronic and vibrational. Okay, so this psi, it is becoming psi EV. That is a combination of both electronic and vibrational. So instead of simply writing psi O, we are writing it as EV, which represents both the electronic and the vibrational level. Okay. So when I make it, I know that psi E is nothing but psi EV is nothing but psi E into psi V. Okay, here we have written. So psi EV. Okay, so I know that psi EV is nothing but psi E into psi V. So I'll put those values in the equation. So when we put those values in the equation, what happens is it is becoming psi E of the ground into psi V of the ground, same mu. So instead of EV, we are splitting it into two factors, that is a combination of both electronic and vibrational. And since we are talking only in the Laporte, we will not talk about the second part. We will talk only about the first part of the equation. Okay, multiplied by the dipole moment, electronic dipole moment, then psi E of the excited state and psi V of the excited state. Okay. Now, this fifth equation, the first part is important because we are talking about the vibronic transitions. Okay. And you can tell that. So, if I put the irreducible representation, same thing I can write it as irreducible representation, irreducible representation, irreducible representation of psi E. Okay. Then irreducible representation of psi V. Okay, then irreducible representation of mu I, irreducible representation of psi E of excited state, and irreducible representation of the psi V of the excited state. All this direct product, whenever I do, taking their irreducible representation, they should contain or they should be equal to the totally symmetric irreducible representation, that is A. Then only that transition is going to become a allowed transition. Okay. Now, so same thing we have written in the, so I can convert this into bringing this out. Okay. We will tell that this direct product, it should give the, should be equal to the electronic transition. So I can tell that electric dipole moment. So I can tell that when a molecule is electronically excited with simultaneous excitation of vibration, so you are having both electronic as well as vibrationally excitation. Then when these two are coupling, you call them as vibronic coupling. Okay. And how is the name derived? From the vibro, VIBR. Okay. And from electronic, ONIC. So whatever I have put in the capitals, they have taken this part. So it is a combination of vibrational and electronic transitions, right? So VIBR from the vibrational and ONIC from the electronic. They have coupled that and gave a new name calling it as vibronic. So whenever I tell vibronic, this is vibrational and this is electronic transitions. These two are coupling. So hence these two are coupling. What is happening? The transition is becoming a allowed transition. So it is not purely D to D because of some involvement of the vibrational levels. Okay, that is becoming a allowed transition. Okay, so a transition from the electronic ground state in a particular vibrational level 0 or 1, okay, occurs to an electronic excited state in different vibrational level, that is, this is for the excited state 0 or 1. So during this, whenever there is a coupling between the vibration and electronic, you call it as the same thing we have I've given in this treatment. Okay. So whenever we do this direct product, it will contain the totally symmetric representation, then only it becomes the allowed transition. So this is about the vibronic coupling. We will just take an example, the octahedral complex, which is a centrosymmetric molecule. Okay, and we know that from the normal mode analysis. Okay, these are the energy terms it is having, that is A1G plus EG plus 22G plus T1U plus T2U. Okay, now the odd vibrations, that is the unjarred vibrations, they are nothing but that U. Okay, so which remove temporarily is T1U and T2U type. Okay, so what happens whenever the dipole moment mu I in the octahedron belongs to T1U, the direct products corresponding to all G to G transitions yield only U term. So this you have to remember whenever we are talking about the T1U. Okay, and all these transitions, they always, we know that G into G is U, right? G into G is U. Okay, so they yield the U terms. Okay, and T1U or T2 are vibrationally allowed transitions. So these are becoming vibrationally allowed transitions. We will just see. And these allowed transitions, they are having high intensity. Okay, now just look at these examples. Okay, so A1G to A2G, G to G. Whenever we do, okay, since it is a vibronic coupling, what is happening is you are getting a T1U. Whenever you are getting U, it is nothing but G to U. Okay, so it is becoming a allowed transition. The direct product of this is A to G into T1U, because we know that all the X, Y, and Z, they are contained in the T1U. Okay, so we will get the direct product as T1U. Whenever you are getting this U, it is nothing but vibronic coupling. Okay, when you look at this EG to EG transition, again we are doing the direct product of EG multiplied with T1U, because all the X, Y, Z, the mu I is T1U represented. Last class I have shown you the octahedral point group, where I clearly showed you that the X, Y, and Z of mu I, they are represented in the form of T1U. Okay, so that is what we are writing here. So this is your ground state, this is your excited state, a reducible representation, and this is the mu I of that particular transition. Okay, so again here you are getting the values, resultant product is in terms of U. Whenever you are getting G to G transition resulting in U, you call it as vibronic. Okay, so there is some relaxation. Now look at this U to G. Whenever we are going from U to G, it is a proper transition, right? There is no need of any vibronic, because we know that from jarred to unjarred, it is from unjarred to jarred, it is an allowed transition. And when you look at the direct product, that is this one, what is happening? You are getting a totally symmetric product, that is, it is purely orbital. There is no coupling in this, it is a purely orbital rule, okay, which is allowed. Okay, now coming to this one, A2G to A2U, again the direct product is giving you T1G. Here it was giving A1G, so it was allowed, whereas this is giving you a T1G, then it is becoming forbidden. So this table shows you what are the examples of vibronic coupling, what is an example of only the orbital, that is the electronic transition, and what happens if it is not having any totally symmetric, it becomes a forbidden. So this is an allowed and this is a forbidden transition. Okay, this is about your vibronic coupling. So you have three factors which are going to govern the relaxation. First one is deviation from the structure. We have seen an example where a perfect octahedron is becoming the from OH point group to D4H point group. Okay, then we have seen DP mixing, where we are talking about in the acentric molecules, and the third one, vibronic coupling, generally in the centrosymmetric. Whenever there is excitation, both coupling between both electronic as well as vibrational, you call it as electronic and vibrational, you call it as vibronic coupling. Okay, because of this also it is becoming allowed, because the direct product of G to G is becoming U. Okay, G to G is becoming U. Hence, you call it as a vibronic coupling, and it is becoming allowed, and the intensity is also very very good. Okay. Now I will talk about this magnetic dipole transitions. Hello, only Vigna is there.
Yes, ma'am.
Other people have gone. Signal Vigna.
ఏమో మ్యామ్ తెలియదు.
Okay, I'll continue. Let them join if they are coming in between. Okay. So,
ఓకే.
uh, so when you see this, we are talking about magnetic dipole transitions. What did I tell you? మీకు last class లో I have shown you electromagnetic radiation. I have told you that electromagnetic radiation will have both electric and magnetic component. Okay. So when I am talking about that, whatever till now we were talking about only interaction of the molecule with the electric component of the electromagnetic radiation. Okay. Now we will talk about the magnetic. Okay. Magnetic, when a molecule interacts with the magnetic component of this electromagnetic radiation, okay, we result in magnetic dipole transition. Okay. When we said that it is also weaker, I've told you in the beginning only. So magnetic interaction will be weaker when compared to the electronic component. And this type of spectra is mostly seen in the lanthanides and actinides. So all transition complexes, you find the interaction of the electric component with that of the molecules, whereas in the lanthanides and in the actinides, these complexes, the interaction is with that of the magnetic interaction. Okay. Now, these bands, they are very sharp. Okay. And when you look at the absorption spectra, band is very sharp. Okay. So when you write these in the form of the integrals, so this is the magnetic transition. There we have written the electronic transition. Okay, this is the magnetic transition, and the integrals of the psi e, okay, of the ground. So instead of mu I will write mu m, which means magnetic dipole moment. So only one equation only we are writing till now. Okay. So and multiplied with the excited. Okay. Now since this mu m is nothing but the Rx, Ry and Rz, okay, symmetry elements, that is the rotational functions, they all belong to the G symmetry. They all belong to the G symmetry, both in X, Y and Z direction, everything is becoming a G symmetry. Okay. So the selection rule tells that both the ground and the excited state, they all either belong to G or either they belong to U type. Okay. So in this type of magnetic transitions, what you have to remember is whenever you do the integrals, they all belong to the totally symmetric, that is A1G type. And in this, since they are G into G, U into U, same parity, okay, what is happening? The D to D transitions and F to F transitions are magnetic allowed dipole transitions. Whereas in electronic, these were forbidden. When you come to the magnetic, D to D, F to F, okay, these are the allowed transitions. So that was the difference you have to remember between the electric and the magnetic dipole. So those are the basic things about the selection rules, how to relax them and all, as well as the magnetic interaction. Now we know that whenever you are talking about electronic spectra, we are getting bands. Okay. So what are the features you have to study in these particular bands that I will talk now? Okay. So when you look at these band intensities, okay. Now look at these band intensities, the first one. So whenever I have a band, okay. So when I have a band, what happens? The intensity of the band I can read. Okay. So how can I read? If it is in a gaseous substance, the band is very, very sharp. Okay. If it is in a gaseous substance, the band is very, very sharp. So, and these bands are also symmetric. Okay. So I can easily measure the height of that peak and tell this is the intensity of that particular band. Okay. And this, how to measure? You call it as epsilon maximum. Okay. So that is the molar absorptivity, or the other name is molar extinction coefficient. So you can do study easily if it is a gaseous molecule. Okay. Now, Directly you can measure the Emax and you can find out the intensity of the band. But when coming to the solutions or solids, these are not sharp, these bands are broad. Okay, these bands are broad. Okay, and these are not a symmetric band, this is asymmetric bands or unsymmetric bands. Okay, so here you cannot exactly accurately measure the height of the peak or the Emax. Okay, because since it is broad, if it is sharp, I can easily measure like this. Because it is a broad, it is having some range. Okay, I cannot exactly tell where is the Emax exactly. Okay, you cannot tell that. So it is a bit inaccurate. Okay, but what we do here, we generally take the area under the band. What is the area under the band that we take into consideration for the measuring of the intensity. Okay, so what do you do? The area of the entire band is obtained, so you can integrate that to know the intensity. So I am taking this as the integrated intensity between the integrals of V1 and V2, that is from here to here frequencies, the initial frequency to the ending frequency V1 and V2, and the differentiation of the dV. Okay, when you do the integrals and differentiation of that, what we get is, so I is nothing but your intensity integrated, and V1 and V2 are nothing but the starting and ending frequencies of the band. Okay, so to find the oscillator strength, that is F, it is proportional to I, that is your intensity of the band. Okay, and we know that the F is nothing but 0.102 into mc square in by n pi e square integrals of same thing v2 to v1. Okay, epsilon dv. So what is m? M is the mass of the electron, c is the velocity of light, n is the Avogadro number, E is the charge of the electron. So when I simplify putting all these values, okay, what happens? What is that I get? I get the value as 4.6 into 10 to the power of minus 9 epsilon max delta V half. Okay, so V half is nothing but half width of the band. Okay, whatever area is there, you're taking half of that, half width of the band. Okay, so that will give you the force strength. So from this, you can easily calculate. So this half width of the band or width of the band or peak at Emax equal to by 2, half of that. Okay, you can calculate the intensity of the band using this particular delta V half. Okay, so that will give you the intensity in the solutions and the solids. Okay, now coming to the intensity, so we have just seen how to calculate the intensity in the gaseous. Okay, in the gaseous ions, I said it is very sharp, so it is very easy to calculate. When coming to the solutions and the solids, it is becoming a broad peak. Once it is becoming a broad peak, what you have to do is you have to take the band width. Okay, so putting that in the uh, force constant. Okay, we have got the equation that uh, v half delta v half difference in this will give you exactly the half of the Emax. Okay, so you can easily measure what is the Emax. Okay, so Emax by 2 or width of the band or peak at Emax by 2 will give you the band width. Now we will see how the intensities are there in the whenever the transition is in the D to D. Okay, we know that these transitions are forbidden transitions. D to D transitions are Laporte forbidden. But whenever there is some relaxations, the transitions are going to be allowed transitions. Okay, so if it is a fully allowed transition, the intensity is, that is the epsilon value is 10 to the power of 4 to 10 to the power of 6. So you can imagine this will be the highest. Okay, this is allowed transition, it will be like this. If both spin and Laporte forbidden, okay, both are forbidden, both spin as well as Laporte, the intensity is very weak, and the range is, you can see it was 10 to the power of 4, now it is becoming 10 to the power of minus 2 to 10 to the power of minus 8. Minus 8 ante 0.0000. 1, 7 zeros and 1. Okay, అంత తక్కువ ఉంటుంది intensity. Okay, so that is the band intensity. Okay, now when I am talking about, so if it is fully allowed, up to 10 to the power of 6. If it is not allowed both, then it is 10 to the power of -8. So to which extent these transitions are allowed or forbidden, the intensity is depending on them. Okay, so if it is, suppose I have, it is a spin allowed, okay, that means singlet to singlet, but it is a lapote forbidden, then that effect is 1 to 100. Okay, intensity. If it is spin allowed, lapote forbidden, okay, with little bit of mixing. So this is not completely forbidden, little bit of mixing is there, that means partially it is allowed, then again the intensity is increasing. You can see it's going from 10 to 10 to the power of 2. అంటే ఇక్కడ 1 to 10 మధ్యలో ఉంటే ఇక్కడ 10 to 100 మధ్యలో ఉంటుంది. Okay, so little bit of mixing, the intensity is also increasing. So the more it is getting allowed and allowed, the intensity keeps on increases. Okay, so you can study these and see various octahedral molecules you can study, and what they have seen is the spectra will be similar. Okay, as well as the band intensities are also little bit similar. Okay, they will have a comparable band intensity. So I will just give you two examples where you can just compare. Okay, so this is hexaamino cobalt. Okay, overall 3 plus charge, and this is ethylene diamond taken 3 times. Okay, so this is a perfect octahedron. This will be a little bit distorted because it is having a chelate ring. Okay, so this transition, that is singlet A1G to singlet T1G. Okay, so since this is a singlet to singlet, okay, it is the allowed transition. So it is around 21,200 and the intensity is 56. We will concentrate on intensities. Okay, now this one, since it is a little bit distorted, you can see little bit intensity has increased. Okay, similarly here A1G to T2G, both are singlet singlet. Okay, here it is again 56, it is again becoming 78. Okay, so the amount of relaxation you can clearly see here. Okay, but you can see the values are almost same. Frequencies you are getting at same places, only that there is a change in the intensities. From 56 it is going to 88. The second transition, from 56 it is going to 78. Okay, so when you look at these, you can tell that this is not a perfect octahedron when compared to this. That means there is a little bit of relaxation in this. Okay, so these intensities will give you the structure of the molecules. You can predict the structure of the molecules by comparing the band intensities. Okay, so this is one example. Okay, and one more other things is, if we are having organic ligands. So what is this? I can take this example only. Here ethylene diamine is an organic example, whereas ammonia is purely, I can tell it is an inorganic ligand. Or if I have some chlorides, fluorides in that, okay. So how can I tell? The band intensity will be very high whenever you are having the organic ligands when compared to the inorganic ligands. Okay, so the band intensities are more whenever the ligands are organic in nature. Okay, and one more thing, the oxidation state. Okay, if the oxidation state of the metal is more, again the band intensity is more, and if the oxidation state of the metal is low, the intensity is also low. So what is all you can predict? You can predict what type of the ligand, you can predict the structure, you can predict the oxidation state of the metal as well, comparing different complexes using this band intensity. Okay, these are the information you can get from the band intensities. Okay, next one, we can also predict the nature of the metal ligand bond. Okay, whether it is having covalency or not. Okay, so if it is having covalency, the covalency is increasing, then you can tell that intensity is also increasing. Okay, next information you can get from the intensity is, if it is tetrahedral, again it is intensity is more, when compared to the octahedral, intensity is less. Okay, so tetrahedral will give high intense, whereas octahedral gives less intense. Okay, next information you can get from the band intensity is trans and cis isomers. Okay, so when you look at the trans isomers, they are less intense when compared to the cis isomers. So cis isomers is having a higher intensity when compared to the trans isomer, which is having a less intensity. Okay. So these were all about the DD transition. So whenever I'm talking about, we know that there are two types of bands: bands resulting due to DD transitions and bands resulting due to charge transfer bands. Okay, that is whenever there is a charge transfer from the metal to ligand and ligand to metal. Okay, what is happening? You expect there is a transition of charge, because of which you get a band. Okay, so when these type of charge transfer bands are there, okay, and when the ligands are like having the pi donor ligands like Cl minus, bromo, and iodo, the band intensity is very high. Okay, and all these are allowed transitions. So it is epsilon will be greater than 10 to the power of 3. Okay, so your charge transfer is nothing but whenever the electrons. So CT bands, remember that CT bands, that is the charge transfer bands, are having higher intensity when compared to that of the DD transitions, because most all of these CT bands are allowed transitions, whereas DD transitions are partially allowed or some of them are forbidden, and the intensities of the CT bands are always higher. Okay, then uh, the bands will be very high intensity, as because these are, that is what the CT transfer bands are both spin allowed as well as Laporte allowed, hence it is a very high. Okay, so today we have seen two topics. One is the one is relaxation of the spin selection rules. Okay, and the other one is magnetic interaction, okay, which are there in the lanthanides and actinides. And the third one I have talked is only about the band intensities. Okay, so in the next class, that is on Thursday, again I will talk about this continuation of the class, that is bandwidths. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Shall I left, ma'am?
1 second, let me take the 1 second.